Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for June 8, 2023, the end of Rock and Roll edition. We begin with that story. All of our stories today come from the Wall Street Journal. Our first one is from the Risk and Compliance Journal. Richard Vandeford reporting that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said a lawsuit could proceed brought by warehouse workers who claim music from Eminem and others have turned their workplace hostile. Yes, that's right. Apparently now rock and roll can create a hostile workplace. So it turns out that your mother was right, at least according to the Ninth Circuit. Rock and roll can warp your brain. So if they can ban rock and roll, I guess they've already banned the Bible and Shakespeare's left. So good luck. Our next story is about climate change in the form of hazardous smoking conditions in the U.S. East Coast. I hope you have seen the horrific pictures of New York City and as far down as Washington, D.C. about the smoke from the wildfires generated in Canada. The images are just almost Mars-like. And meteorologists have said weather and wind patterns responsible for pushing the wildfire smoke south from Canada is unlikely to change. So if you don't have to go outside and you're in New York, I would suggest that you don't. Next up, also from Richard Vandeport, also in the Risk and Compliance Journal, many companies now are on the defensive as the EU rolls out class action lawsuits, of course, a favorite of U.S. lawyers that recover billions of dollars for individuals, for companies who have violated legal and regulatory requirements. But these are set to roll out throughout the EU this month, and the EU requires each of its members to make it easier for consumer groups to bring group actions targeting wrongful corporate conduct. So the new regime did not create EU-level class action courts, but directed member states to create enabling legislation with certain minimum characteristics. Of course, businesses are just aghast by this, but the reality is that these lawsuits in many ways act as a regulatory check on companies gone wild. And our final story is about the stunning deal by the PGA with LIV Golf and what our corporate sponsor is going to do. Most have not commented yet on the merger, and of course it took them by surprise as much as anyone, but are they going to continue to support PGA and LIV?
The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.